What's going on, everyone? Alex Shinsky here for the Anti-Hustlers Weekly Show. As always, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Brian Downard. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Thank you.
That was the first time he didn't say living the dream, and it's because he's a little sick today. So it's okay that you're just doing okay.
Yeah,
We're good.
It's good. It's all right. If that's the worst thing happening, that I'm a
good.
little sick, then I should be grateful. So
I love it. I love it. Today, we're going to be talking about how to hire a client success manager in order to scale. It's one of the most common issues for agencies, which is essentially, like, how do I grow my business without, doing all the work myself? And so we spoke a lot last week on our retention training about how to actually manage your team and grow your team and CSM expectations. And I'll share a few of those slides again today as we go through it. But ultimately, our goal today is to teach you how and why it's so important to develop these CSMs for scalability and success. So, Brian, let's just kick it over to you here for a second as we get started.
And I'll also say, like you said, a lot of people last week up and down a little bit, but I'm totally fine. Like, there's 3 people here. That's cool. Like, we can do one-on-one coaching here. We let us go through the topics and you guys hang out. Like, this is valuable. I like smaller groups of people sometimes because we can work with you one-on-one. So that's what we're trying to do on this show and not have it be so canned and like try to be perfect on this. So I know a lot of people are going to show up as we get into it. So what I want to talk about first actually is the distinction between a customer success manager and then the people who are actually doing the fulfillment work, because often it's not going to be the same person. The person who has more of the hospitality skill set, the ability to talk kindly to people, deal with issues quickly, that person might not always be like a Facebook person. That person's gonna be more creative or quirky possibly, right? Or more data driven. So a lot of times you're gonna have to, in my opinion, if you aren't in a place where you have either of those things, you start with the fulfillment person and you act as your client success manager for now. I would say probably around the 5 to 10 client mark. It's not gonna be perfect science depending on what you sell. You're gonna really start to consider, okay, I can't manage all the conversations back and forth myself. Now I need an individual to do that for me. So I really want to make the distinction, in my opinion, and Alex, you add anything to this you would like, but a client success manager, so a CSM, that's going to be someone who is doing the calls with clients. So whether that's putting out fires or reporting on whatever the campaign is that they are running, and they're the in-between between the client and the fulfillment team, right? And then also I would say, outside of that, they are proactively managing and reviewing where clients are at in terms of their success metrics. So are they hitting the appropriate success metrics? And then how do we act on that as a company, right? It's typically going to be on the client success manager. And then again, the fulfillment person, as an example, if you're running Facebook ads, that person would just be creating the copy, the creative, running the ads, and doing those types of things.
And for clarity, it is very possible that a lot of agencies, especially smaller ones, that role is the same role. So like the person doing the results is also the one doing CSM work. It's not the ideal scenario long-term for scalability because they're very different like elements of roles, meaning in terms of like skill sets, the ability to communicate one-to-one with a human being and make sure that they feel satisfied and selling perpetual confidence and feeling they're being heard and respected. And then also being like the analytical creative mind that's required to actually do the fulfillment itself. It's usually not ideal to have that. It's possible that that could happen, but that shouldn't be the methodology you expect of building your agency off of. If you missed last week's show, the retention mega event, we dove really into detail about like the appropriate KPIs and success KPIs and what the 30-day and 90-day experience needs to look like, speed to first results, how to hold your clients accountable, how to increase retention, and what the CSMs need to do. If you missed that, just drop a 7 in the chat and we'll make sure that you get access to it from last week. It's in our Facebook group. It's 100% for free. It's very good quality. And it will really help and make a massive difference in your scalability of your agency. Specifically, what I wanted to touch on today is really why you need to deliver this high quality experience to ensure they retain. We discussed this last week, but just as a reminder, if you are bringing on clients at the same rate that you're losing clients, you're never going to actually get ahead. You're going to just stay stuck in the same exact spot. And probably worse, you won't be able to actually get anywhere in your business because you're going to feel like you you suck at your job. And that mental like languishing of, oh, we can't retain our clients, it's very challenging to overcome that. And so CSMs, their responsibility is to obsess over client retention by making sure you have the right KPIs in place. And so at least one thing we want you to take away from this session is a success KPI. What you want to know is exactly why someone is working with you. What is the reason that they're working with you? And we dove into immense detail on this last session, so I'm not going to go into it much more, but just make sure you know why. And it can't just be more patients, more money, more growth, more jobs. It needs to be something specific. The more specific it is, the better. And if they can't come up with a reason other than more, ask them what it does when they have more. Ask them to envision that. That's when it becomes real. So if they say, I want to get more patients, and you say, why? And they say, because, and they say, well, I want to get 10 more patients, and you say, why? And they say, well, it would be great if I could hire another dentist so I didn't have to do all of the dental work myself. That's the real why. That's what they're really looking for in working with you. Don't settle just for the surface level why. It's not going to allow you to be successful long-term, and will ultimately withhold you from being able to get the best results possible. Okay. So I wanted to bring that up, and I'm going to share a couple slides on the CSM stuff.
Sure. I have one more thing I want to add. I think what you can do, and I'm actually working with a client in the program right now on taking a fulfillment person and elevating them into the role of CSM, because they understand the role. They've already been communicating with clients, and now we can go hire someone underneath them, virtual assistant, for this type of tasks they were doing. And that allows that person who understands to still be in a management position, but know what the fulfillment team needs to do to be successful. Because it's also can be challenging if the CSM, as an exaggerated example, did come from hospitality. They work front desk at a hotel, and now you're asking them to run a marketing agency. It's not going to always be a perfect fit. So you need to make sure you're giving them the time they need to train and onboard. So cool. But again, this is what we're going to talk about today, where you can overcome some of those blocks that people typically get when they're hiring by doing a placement service. So one of these companies we're going to recommend.
So let's talk about where to source them from. So we have several different recommendations. We want to share up front that we do have bias with these companies because a few of them we have affiliate arrangements with. So keep that in mind, please. But we would never have an affiliate arrangement with a company if we didn't believe that they were worthwhile to have that arrangement with in terms of delivering. So there's a few of them that we'll name in no specific order, so we don't play favorites. There's probably three that we'll just start with, which is going to be RepStack, Agency Growth Team, and FreeUp. Those are three companies that we advise and recommend to consider working with. That being said, it's really important to understand what each of them do and the differences between them. So I'll just kick this off by explaining FreeUp versus the other two, because it's by far the most different of the three. FreeUp is basically a hiring platform very similar to Upwork. The difference is that they provide you a project manager versus Upwork. It's like a platform that you have to dive through yourself. The project manager will help assign you the right person, and you can pay for 3 different levels of experience, which is pretty amazing, like beginners, intermediate, and then experts. And of course, the amount of money you have to pay scales based off of that. FreeUp is a very effective and successful company. They're very good at what they do. I would always recommend someone check FreeUp before Upwork at any time, just in case you're looking for a CSM or really any role at all. I dropped in the chat below, but if you go to freeup.net/POD, FreeUp is spelled normal, free, FREE, up.net/POD, you get $50 free credit. Basically, you can hire someone for $10 or $15 an hour and get 3 to 5 hours for free to see what their roles are like. So that would be FreeUp in my recommendation. Brian, is there anything else you want to add about those people? Discuss 2 others.
Yeah, thank you for the different levels are important to understand, right? Because the higher ones are obviously going to be better talent typically, not always, but you're going to be paying per hour on this platform, and it can get very costly and hard to manage when you're paying someone $25 to $50, $100 an hour. Like, it starts to get very, very challenging to make sure they're being used effectively. So we typically coach, get someone to a place where they are hourly to test them. Maybe it's for a month, 45 days. And if you like them, come to an agreement on a flat rate, especially for these higher end roles. Like if you're doing $5 an hour, $10 an hour or below, you wouldn't do that ideally for a CSM, but other roles you can get away with paying hourly, because it's not going to hurt you as much when that adds up.
Yeah. So in terms of like expectations for what you should be paying someone, if you're paying someone about 10 to 20% of your client price for them managing your clients, that's pretty hefty. that is something that would be like the most expensive you can consider. So if you are at $2,500 a month per client, and you pay someone 10% of that, $250 per client, you got 20 clients, they're going to make a lot of money. So it doesn't have to be that rate, but at the smaller level, you have to be somewhere around that 10% range.
Sure.
When you have larger companies, you need to consider how much your CSMs can really manage on average. And it's very variable, but on average, we see people are capable of probably managing about 15 to 20 accounts at a time. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. The second company would be RepStack. Great company. They've sponsored our events multiple times. They are also clients of Prospecting on Demand. So we are very biased related to them, but they have a very unique and interesting business model. They've built out an entire hiring platform using Pakistan, Bangladesh, and a third country I can't remember off the top of my head, so I apologize. But it's really incredible what they've developed by allowing people to get training first and then they get hired. So they source people, and then they have what's RepStack Success Academy. They'll make them stay in that academy for at least a month, where they get trained on insights from Alex Schlinsky, Brian Downard, and Prospecting on Demand coaches, so that they're prepped to be a good CSM or a marketer or whatever, or salesperson, whatever you need specifically. And then the way that they do business is you will get on a call with them, they'll audit whatever you need, and then they'll give you a few people to consider to place with, and then you make the decision of whether or not you want to work with them. We cannot recommend them enough. They're an incredible company, great human beings, and they do an amazing work by really making a massive difference for the amount of women and people that they work with in Pakistan particularly. A lot of people, I want to be blunt about this, a lot of people will be like, but the accents and stuff. The reality is the people that we speak to from RepStack often speak better English than Americans, like straight up. They're really, really good at it. Obviously, they have an accent, but they're really good at this job, and I would really recommend considering them. So that would be RepStack. So anything you want to add on RepStack before we talk AGT?
No, I think they do a couple of hiring placements as well. So if you're looking for a media buyer, like the fulfillment person as well, they have that as an option. And then also sales development reps. So
that's right.
Kind of like an appointment setter, kind of in the gray area of a VA appointment setter, maybe a little bit of selling and follow-up.
Yeah, it's a great company. The last company we would advise or recommend would be AGT, Agency Growth Team. This is also, again, a client of ours, which is Brad Ferris and Brett McHugh. Love them very much. Great people. They specifically only place CSMs. They have built a very successful marketing agency with POD's help in the doctor niche in the medical industry. And yeah, there's their hat right there. It's called Clinic Grower. And what they've found is they've built out like a really effective process for hiring and team management that ultimately, because they have so many clients, I think it's 50 plus, they have to have like a really strong hiring system to bring on more people. And they have a lot of leftovers. And so what they do is they provide you with the leftovers that they have. And some people will say, oh, well, like they're picking and choosing the highest quality. The reality is, if they pick the highest quality, but then there's 6 other highest quality people they can't hire, you're the one that gets the second one. So the opportunity is great. I would never say anything bad whatsoever about their company. They're great. Brad Ferris is the person that you'd want to chat with about it. I would try all of these companies. They're all really good, and they'll all provide you with differing levels of support to make sure that you're successful with the CSM. So that's how you source.
Yeah, I would say, like, just in terms of how much you need from someone right now, because you might be in a place where you don't need a full-time person. FreeUp is probably going to be a place to start with, because these other places, they're typically going to look for part-time, like 20 hours, or full-time 40 hours a week on their hires.
So I see Jake Shore is asking a bunch of questions on Facebook, by the way. If you want to jump on the link, Jake, we can chat about it live so that you get exactly what you're looking for here. And I'll make sure that you're supported. So that's totally good. And anyone on here that has any questions about this, please let me know. I'll make sure that you're supported. Absolutely. There's no issues with it whatsoever. Just to make sure that we're moving forward with the content, because like where to source them isn't the most important thing. Obviously, you need to know where to source in order to actually be able to do this, but it's really not the crux of what we're trying to accomplish today. We spoke about last week in real detail about how to deliver a high quality experience. And I don't want to like diminish what we put in the work on last week, because we gave a lot of effort into providing you a high quality understanding of what it takes to be successful. But what I did want to do is talk about how to avoid micromanaging so you can focus on scaling. This is super important. Like at the end of the day, most people that hire a CSM ends up becoming like very, very micromanagement heavy. So what I'm going to do is just show a few of the slides that we spoke about or showed last week that I think are really important and necessary to bring up once again, so you can feel confident and comfortable with how to ensure that you're not micromanaging. So what I'll do is
I want real quick before you do that,
please.
you need to tell yourself and come to the acceptance right now that mistakes will be made when you give someone else the reins to do and the power to do something in your business that you hold very close and dear, communicating with clients, whatever that is. And it's scary and mistakes will be made. So you need to accept that as part of the learning curve and the opportunity, the cost of trying to get to the next level is that's going to happen. And it's necessary and it's needed because it'll show the cracks that you need to fill.
And that also doesn't inherently mean that the CSM you hired is bad. A lot of the times what ends up happening or what we find is that the system for client retention or client management is non-existent. And so the client success manager is the one that identifies those gaps, right? Like that's what we see a lot of times. So in order to help you, I wanted to share this from last week. These are just a few of the slides we discussed last week. I'm not going to go into too much detail on them, but can everyone see what I'm looking at here? Can you drop a 7 if you can see it, please? Make sure we're good on the same page. Can you guys see this? All right, cool. Awesome. All right. So the first thing is, Brian and I are an immense belief of ensuring that the people we work with, we kind of coordinate them into a yellow, red, or green format, right? So yellow means that they're kind of shaky ground. They're probably not going to continue, but we're not sure. And we can bring them back to green. Red means they're going to cancel. And obviously green means they're good to go. The thing is that the CSM that you work with, in order for you not to micromanage, they just have to have a client cheat sheet. I like to think about it kind of like a baseball card. Like back in the day when you turn over a baseball card to tell you all the stats, that's what you need to have for every client. Like, what is the goals of the client? What are the obstacles the client had? What is that success KPI? If they have that for every single client, their job is so much easier to identify what's needed to be successful. Holding clients accountable is what their job is. Now, when we say consistently here, that's not a specific KPI. And so if you don't have a specific KPI for your CSM, if you want them to message them every week, but you don't say that, and instead you say consistently, you can't be upset if they follow up twice a month. So it's really important that you develop what you are comfortable with in terms of delivering a high quality client experience. People ask us like, how often should you hold your client accountable and that kind of stuff. It's different for every business. For a SaaS business, an agency, an SEO company, a PPC company, if you have specific questions, ask us and we will support you. Absolutely. I'm not going to review the rest of this right now because we spoke about this in detail last week, but I did want to speak on this one particularly. This is our client cheat sheet in POD. I shared this last week, but I wanted to just show it again.
Cool. Yeah. So this is definitely some of the stuff that we awesome. This is exactly what I wanted to get into. So we have this information right inside of ClickUp for all of our clients. And for example, today we were trying to figure out clients who have gotten under 10 booked sales calls in a month, so we could go to those individuals and communicate with them about what's going on. And that would be very challenging to do if we're like, hold on. Can we go ask those 50 clients what they're doing, what their numbers are? But we already had some of this in here, so we can be proactive with that information. And then our executive assistant's able to give us a list of, here's the 5 clients who haven't been reached out to this week who are under 10 sales calls last month. Right. Let's act on this. So this is how you can use the data to turn clients to a point where they want to continue.
And it's not like, oh my God, how could they not be at 10 sales calls? We're the worst. This is just what data is. Data doesn't lie to you. It tells you what's happening, and then you can utilize it to take action on it. Just some insights on how your CSM should be planning their week. They should be considering, first of all, is there any client issues right now that we need to be considering? We need to be proactive in our outreach, not reactive. When you play defense, it's infinitely more challenging to be successful than it is when you play offense. So for example, with our messaging in POD, if we were to send to someone, hey, we noticed that you're not getting at least 10 sales calls right now per month, we need to change that. What are you doing right now to ensure that we're getting there so we can help optimize it? Versus someone reaching out to us and saying, hey man, I'm really struggling. What do I do? That looks a lot worse because we now have to play defense. Does that happen? Of course that happens. But ultimately, our goal is to be proactive because that's what our model is all about, right? The other considerations for weekly CSM, is there any billing issues? Is there any billing upcoming? If they are doing admin, sometimes CSMs also do admin work on like billing. It's not always, but sometimes they do. Are there any clients in yellow or in red that we need to speak up on and to discuss? does each client have a next action? So the easiest way for a CSM to be successful is we use ClickUp to identify like notes for every client we work with and a clear next action that we can hold accountable to the coach or CSM that's required to take action on it, so that you can then hold them accountable to it, because that's a really valuable piece of business. So if the next step for each client was they're required to send us over a lead outcome audit, breaking down the last 10 leads they got, and they said they would do it in 5 days. Well, 3 days later, hey, you have 2 days left to get it over to us. Are you going to get it to us? That type of planning and organization is very valuable and super key. What meetings do I have? What meetings need to be scheduled? Are we missing anything from our clients? And then when was a client last contacted? Just some considerations on weekly planning. Is there anything else you want to add here, Brian? Are you good with this?
This is good. Let's, I want to go back to like not micromanaging.
Yeah, so this is the other methodology of not micromanaging and just documentation, right? Making sure that there's an agenda for every call is a way that you can ensure you're not going to micromanage your CSMs, because they're going to do exactly what is told to them by building out the agenda. And then also giving them leverage and confidence to say, hey, if you think we can do something better in our retention system, tell me. That's how you avoid micromanagement. If you are micromanaging them and think that, you know, you holding them on a leash is going to have success in your business long-term, it's the opposite effect. Ultimately, what's going to end up happening is they're never going to want to work with you again, because they're never going to feel that they have the ability to say anything without fear of getting fired. And so making sure that they have the ability to have say on how to implement and effectively optimize the system is going to be key. You can read the rest here. I'm not going to really detail it out anymore, but ultimately I just want to share this kind of, you know, baseline insight on some of the stuff we discussed last week.
Cool. Yeah, I got 2 words: permission and discipline. You need to give your team permission to fix these things, come to you when things are wrong, not be afraid to report bad things to you or take action in their hands, not be afraid to do their job. You need to give them permission, remind them, and then you need to have the discipline to not go do their job for them. It's very easy to feel like you can do it better and faster, and that's probably true, but that's not how you're going to grow your business. So have clear expectations with clients on communication, and if you've trained your clients that you are going to be at their beck and call, we need to kind of undo that. There's definitely ways you can, but again, if anyone's hanging out here wants to ask something specific around how they can hire or not micromanage their team, happy to get into it.
So I don't know if Jake is iPhone, but he did write a couple of things that I can answer right now. And if that is you, Jake, you can unmute yourself, but I'm going to read it, what he said, and then I will answer this question. So Jake said, issue I found was separating the roles, particularly what he was talking about is about 15 minutes ago, we had mentioned separating the roles of the fulfillment person and the CSM. He said the issue I found was separating the roles of a CSM and of the fulfillment manager or fulfillment person. It means the CSM doesn't always have the info they need because the fulfillment team didn't update and vice versa. Then drop off happens if it's just one role. Do you think it should be split?
I think
have them do both for less communication. So
yeah, that's the scorecard.
Yeah. So the recommendation on this, first of all, is it depends on the size of your company is one, right? So like if you have under 10 clients, it's okay if it's the same person, but they have to have that unique skill set of being able to do the fulfillment and CSM work at the same time. And that's pretty hard to do. So just keep that in mind. That being said, if they do have that skill set and you don't have enough clients to have both, then that's totally fine to connect them. Let's do the example though of what if you have a larger business, you got 25 clients. The idea that you would have 25 clients and they would do fulfillment and CSM work at the same time is illogical. It's never going to happen. There's not going to be a successful agency in the entire industry that is capable of doing that because it's just not scalable. There's too much fulfillment work to do fulfillment work and CSM work. So the thing that needs to happen is you have to build out a system or operation for how to communicate appropriately between the CSM and the fulfillment person. There's a couple different ways to do this. The simplest way is using something like Asana, Trello, or ClickUp, where the CSM will put, or the fulfillment person will put in the clear data that's required for the CSM to see on an upcoming call. That's like the easiest way. A more robust method is when there's an upcoming call for a CSM to do a reporting conversation with a team member, with a client, what you can do is you can have a Zapier that shoots an email over, or however you communicate with your clients in in Slack, that sends a message to the CSM that will say, hey, you have a call coming up with so-and-so, review this form. And the form is filled out by the reporter, by the fulfillment person who's executing a form about what's the most recent results. Now, in the last week, we did a reporting agenda. I guess just whatever, I'll share it. It's not that big of a deal. I will show you guys an example of like our reporting agenda in POD. and like how we recommend doing this, because it's not that big of a deal. And I think it will help you guys a lot. So I will show it to you. So basically what we cover in our reporting calls are 7 elements. So like what's one major highlight, what's important KPIs and metrics, what's recent optimizations and results, what's the goals and optimizations for next month, what do we need from you, client accountability, and then a high level overview. The fulfillment person is responsible for giving this data over to the CSM 24 hours before the call. The CSM is required to then review it. It would probably be better at 48 hours before the call, but the CSM is required to review it at least 24 hours before so they can confirm anything with the fulfillment person to ensure that they get the data. Now, a lot of people will say, but like, oh, like, isn't there potential for miscommunication? Or what if the client has a question for the CSM about fulfillment and they don't know the answer? And the answer to that is pretty simple. It says, hey, my responsibility in the company is to ensure you get clarity on exactly what we're delivering for you and you're happy with the experience. I don't actually do the fulfillment myself. Our internal team does. I will go back and report to them this question you have and come back to you. No logical client will ever be like, how do you not know that? That's just the structure of the business, right? And so it's much more effective to have that role in place. We really strongly recommend separating the roles versus having them together. So that was the answer to that question. Hopefully it helps, Jake. And anyone else?
Yeah, and I would say when you get bigger as well, you can have an executive assistant collecting that data and reporting on it for you. So she can go get it from the fulfillment team, or he can go find it wherever the place is, and then put that into a spot where the CSM has easy access.
100%. Absolutely. Does anyone here live on the show have any questions for us, or anyone on the actual Zoom, on the Facebook call itself? If you do, just ask. I'm more than happy to answer. No bad, wrong, or stupid questions. All questions are available and welcome. And we just want to make sure that you're supported and get whatever you need from this show. As always, we appreciate your time. Grateful for it. And whatever we can do to help, we're here. Got anything for us? Brian, is there anything else you wanted to share today outside of the stuff we discussed?
I'm just reading this message. So what happens when you type on your iPhone?
CSM, Client Success Manager. A CSM is a client success manager. That's someone that is responsible for ensuring that your client is satisfied through the process. They do account management between the client and the fulfillment person to ensure that the results are consistent. They do the communication with the clients, the reporting calls with the clients.
Yeah, one of the obvious things I left off too is onboarding as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions for us, guys? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask us anything if you need, and we're good to go. Of course, no problem. Jenna, you have anything?
Actually, yeah, I just unmuted myself. Did you guys, I missed the first like 10 minutes. Did you guys talk about pricing when you're starting out using a CSM?
Yeah, we did, but we can recap it again for you. So it really depends on your product. So let's just use you as an example, as if we were doing one-to-one. What is your current product, Jenna? How much does it cost?
I offer a couple different things, but like my SEO, local SEO, I sell for $12.50 a month.
$1,250 per month. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
And who is currently the CSM for that product? Is it you? Are you doing that work?
Yeah, I'm pretty much by myself right now.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. So, and are you also doing the fulfillment of the SEO too?
No, I outsource everything pretty well, not everything, but I outsource a lot of stuff.
What's the cost of goods sold for that? So in terms of selling a $1,250 product, how much profit do you automatically have from that?
$750.
Okay, so you have $750. Cool. How many clients do you have at that product?
2. And then I have, so that's like my biggest MMR product that I have right now, like my biggest ticket one that I have now.
Okay, I think based on where you're at right now, about $150 per account is pretty reasonable. What we want to end up doing is making it not based off of like a range of the amount of clients you have, because it's going to be based off of their ability to execute the job effectively. We definitely do not recommend paying hourly. That's definitely the opposite of what you want to do with a CSM. But based on your budgeting, like if you're going to end up making $600 profit per client that you have, your business is making $600 profit and the fulfillment is handled and you don't have to do any client success management, that would be a huge win for sure. So I'd feel pretty comfortable with that rate. The issue with that is you might not have enough clients to be able to get a CSM to get paid that, because at that rate, they would get paid $300 total. No one's going to work at $300, right? So that's kind of the middle of the road problem that you would have. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I would say you can still self-manage at this point, probably up to like 4, 5-ish, maybe. But again, I think what's important is you don't train your clients that you have now to really like have you always be there and on call, because it gets very hard to break that. And you feel like anchored to these clients in a way, which I've been there. So just really try to draw fair and clear expectations on communication. So when you do hire someone, they're not wondering, what happened to Jenna.
100%. Yeah. So I
Yeah, I
think
guess that's what I'm trying to get out of right now.
Yeah.
And it's super common. So when you get the person, let me share with you how to transition. This is a great question. So when you get, enough clients to the point where you can't deliver for them, deliver in terms of being the face of like CSM work, right? The most important thing to do when you communicate with clients about any change that's going to happen is always expressing it in their benefit. The thing that we've seen so many agencies screw this up with is they bring on a CSM after like being like super involved in their client accounts, right? And then suddenly they say to the client in an email, not even on a call, right? After they've created a real relationship, like, hey, I'm introducing you to Michelle. She's going to take over CSM. I'm just too busy. Meaning what you're doing is you're like throwing the client under the bus, being like, I'm handing you off because I don't have time for you. The opposite is what you're trying to say. It's like, hey, as our company grows, we want to ensure that our client success maintains as the number one responsibility of Bullseye Digital. It's most important to us that you have a great experience with us on a consistent basis. In order to do so, we've recently brought on a new client success manager that's sole focus is ensuring that you, Michelle, like Tracy, whatever your name is, you, Tracy, have an exceptional experience working with us. Moving forward, you will see a lot more of Michelle in support. She'll also be CC'd on every email that we have to ensure she can help you. So you have a dedicated account manager to your success. You will see her on our next reporting call. Now, it would be better to do this on the reporting call than it would be via email, but that's how you frame something for their benefit versus I'm busy to talk to you. You know what I mean? So it's really, really important to understand that framework. Does that make sense, Jenna? Are you clear on that? You can drop a 7 or you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Cool. In terms of the payments, just want to wrap this up. I feel pretty confident with the 10 to 20% angle. 20% is pretty high. 10% is good. The problem is you're going to have to overpay them at the beginning for where you're at currently because you don't have enough clients. So that's just what it has to be. So you have to explain to them like, I'm going to pay you up front, let's say $2,000 a month, which is way more than what you're getting paid for each individual client. But once we pass 10 clients, then you'll get an additional raise as an example, meaning they might have 3 to start. You bring on 7 more. They don't expect to get paid more, but they will have increased responsibility. It's a little bit hard to do.
You took my good advice, man. You're like reading my mind right now. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with this.
Look at that. He wants to just take credit for
No, it was mine. I thought at first, and then you said it.
Okay, Coach
yeah,
Sarah asked one question. If you have a small
let me
team,
take this one. I already read it, but go ahead. You can read it out loud.
Nope, you're good. Read it out loud.
All right. So if you have a small team, is it better that the fulfillment person is different from the CSM role? 2-person team. Sorry if I was covered already. No stress. We do recommend at some point they are separate people. What we covered at the beginning was that it's very likely or very challenging and unlikely to find someone who is going to be able to fit both of those roles. What I would recommend starting with first would be the fulfillment person. Get the actual client work completely off your plate if possible. And I see you're a coach, so maybe this is where it's a little more nuanced, right? Because you're a coach and all the genius is within your head. The CSM actually becomes more like a coach as well. So it might not just be, or I'm sorry, your fulfillment person is likely going to be another coach, not a media buyer, like we're suggesting here, which frankly, a coach is probably a good person to be as a CSM. So in that case, that person could be elevated to the role. But at some point when you're probably at 20, 25 clients plus, they're going to be distinctly different people. And ideally in a coaching business, your main CSM is your head lead best coach.
That's right. So one other note to consider is like what is like the KPI you should consider when you should hire a CSM? I think there's probably two that would be valuable to consider. If you're past $10,000 in revenue per month, it's definitely a good time to have a CSM for sure. If you're not at $10,000 a month in recurring revenue, but your entire day basically is handled by client responsibilities, then you have to hire either a fulfillment person or a CSM. It's probably likely what Brian said, hiring the fulfillment person first. If your job role as you build from freelancer to business owner is understanding three main roles of doing the fulfillment, doing sales, and doing client success management, if you hand off fulfillment first, so your job role is doing sales and client management, that's good. That's solid. Long term, though, ultimately you want to hand off all three. The last one, this is a personal thing, but the last one that I would always hand off would be sales. So it would be fulfillment first, client success management second, sales third. That's not a black or white thing. That's not the same for every single person, but that's definitely how we coach and what we recommend very strongly in prospecting on demand.
And we got a number of clients, including someone here in this room, who is a partner in a business where they can split those roles earlier on, right? And that's typically what we want you to do. Don't try and find someone where you're going to do the exact same thing as them. You want to have the split in acquisition and client success, right? Because you need someone who's going to be there retaining, keeping clients, keeping them happy, getting results, and then the person on the front end bringing in business.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up here, there is one additional question. Tony asked, okay, there's a few more actually, sorry. Jose, Tony, and Coach Lee Cara. So I'm going to answer all these really quick. So Coach Lee said, right now I do sales, my partner does fulfillment. We just don't know who should cover the CSM role. So first of all, if someone would prefer doing it, that would be an ideal scenario. Secondly, if when you say you do sales, you're doing outbound prospecting and selling, if your day is not 100% consumed by outbound prospecting and sales, then you have the time to do CSM. But my argument would be, why is it not consumed with it, right? So to me, logically, it would probably make more sense that the fulfillment person does the CSM role, but in this specific scenario, I'm not saying long-term. So that would be my thoughts on that. Jose,
and that real quick too, it's interesting, and we talked about this before, but the person who makes the sale is typically the person who earns the trust of the client first. So when shit hits the fan, ideally it doesn't happen, you make your process better, they come back to, and they supersede, go over the head of the CSM and go to the person who sold them. So just keep that in mind as well, that you may need to be able to, you have to put out some fires as a salesperson as well.
Super common. Okay, Jose Paredes, what is the best way to explain that an initial setup fee is not negotiable and is really necessary? That has nothing to do with what we were talking about today, but I will answer that for you in a minute. Secondly, Tony G, how much should we pay a CSM for monthly retainer based on a 1K monthly management fee? I think 10% is good. I think $100 per client is pretty fair. That's what I would feel pretty comfortable with. Depends on how many clients they're going to manage, but I think 10% is pretty good. That's what I would do. Tony, considering the size of your business, I think that's pretty solid. 10%, 5-10% is good. All right. Is there any other questions on CSM stuff before we wrap up? All right, cool beans. Thanks so much for joining us today. I will answer Jose's question, even though it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What is the best way to explain that initial setup fee is not negotiable and really necessary? One, it actually has to be really necessary, meaning there's a reason behind it. Like you have a purpose behind it. And then just explaining it. Like the reason we do a setup fee is based off of us having to put in upfront work on developing an actual like funnel that we're not charging you additional for. If you go work with a separate agency and just try to get them to build you a funnel, funnels usually will charge you anywhere from $7,500 up to $15,000. What we do, since you're going to be paying us on a monthly basis for advertising at $2,000 a month, we have an additional setup fee of $2,000 total. That's a one-time setup fee you will not have to pay again, but it's non-negotiable because we cannot offer or operate our regular system for advertising management without having this funnel in place. Now, Jose, that only works if that's for real. A lot of people in the agency space make up setup fees because they just think it's a way to cash grab. Don't make up shit to cash grab. That's like shitty salesmanship. And ultimately you would never want to be treated that way. So the best way to do sales is by trying to do sales the way you want to be treated. It's pretty simple. So hopefully that helps. And that's about it. Thanks so much for your time today, Brian. Love you. Appreciate you doing this while you're not feeling good. Fam, we will have a great show next week. Come back, join us Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern every single Thursday. We'll see you then. If you have any questions or need anything from us, always feel free to reach out. And if you want to come out to our next event, Detroit, May 18th, 19th, 20th, it's going to be great. Can't wait to see all y'all there. If you want to come out, let us know. Just drop an event. We'll be happy to help you, and we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.